If I had to pinpoint the exact second my marriage cracked open like a rotten egg, it was when I saw my wife's necklace, the one she only wore to impress someone, neatly draped over the faucet of our downstairs bathroom sink. Not our bedroom sink. Not even the guest bathroom. No, the one right beside the garage, where I just parked and hadn't even finished turning off the ignition before spotting it through the cracked open door. I'd laugh if it weren't so poetic, like she wanted to mark the territory she'd desecrated. Now, let me tell you a few things about Emma. She wasn't stupid. Calculating, yes. Secretive, sure. But never careless. So to see her favorite jewelry, an 18-karat gold chain I bought her last Christmas, left in plain sight like a breadcrumb trail, was enough to stir something primitive inside me. But instead of acting on it, I ran the faucet, rinsed the chain off like it was just a forgotten trinket, and set it back down, exactly how I found it. Then I walked upstairs and called her name as if I hadn't just seen the first crack in our reality. She answered from the bedroom, voice smooth, distracted, as if she were texting or maybe fixing her makeup. When I walked in, she was standing by the mirror, hair down, wearing perfume that hadn't been touched in weeks. We were going nowhere that night. No date planned. No guests. Just a Thursday with no expectations. She smiled quickly, closed her phone just a second too slow, and asked how work was. I told her it was fine, and that I was hungry. Dinner was Thai takeout. Pad CEW for me, green curry for her. She made some offhand joke about the fortune cookies always being wrong, and I laughed like it was the funniest thing I'd heard in years. Not because it was, but because the absurdity of it all, the casualness, the normalcy, the paper-thin veil over what I now knew, was the kind of comedy that deserves a slow clap and a drink to chase the bitterness. I watched her eat, studied her movements, noticed how she didn't seem as ravenous as usual, how she only picked at her rice. A woman who used to clear her plate now suddenly dieting? Or was she just full from the meal she shared with someone else an hour earlier? She asked if I wanted to watch that series we'd been binging, something about crime in Iceland, and I said sure. We sat down, lights off, her head eventually resting on my shoulder like it always did. She didn't notice that I never touched her hand. Didn't notice that my arm didn't tighten around her. She just smiled during the funny parts, and I let the shadows do the acting for me. The next morning, I left earlier than usual. Told her I had a site meeting. In reality, I sat in my truck 2 blocks away, waiting. And at 10:23 a.m., he pulled into the driveway. Navy blue Audi, tinted windows, some wannabe alpha in a suit jacket with his tie already loosened. He knocked like it was his place, not mine. She opened the door fast. Too fast. They didn't kiss on the porch, that would have been too obvious. But I saw the way she touched his shoulder when she let him in. Intimate. Familiar. The same way she used to touch mine when we were still honest. I didn't confront her. Didn't even call. I just drove off, found a quiet parking lot by the river, and sat for an hour with the engine running, replaying everything. The necklace. The half-eaten curry. The cologne I didn't recognize when I hugged her goodnight. Every piece added to a puzzle I didn't want to solve, but couldn't stop assembling. And when I finally breathed out, slow and even, I realized something important. Anger wouldn't help me. Screaming wouldn't fix it. No, if I wanted justice, not revenge, justice, I had to be smarter than both of them. So I went home, made dinner again, cleaned the house, kissed her on the forehead when she got back, and asked how her day was. She said she'd just met up with a friend for lunch. I asked which one. She said Karen. Karen, who's currently in Bali, according to her Instagram. I smiled. Told her to say hi next time. She nodded, unblinking, unaware that I just quietly set the first domino down. It was a small moment, just a necklace in the wrong place. But that's how the strongest buildings fall. Not in one great explosion, but with a single hairline fracture no one notices until it's too late. Our life looked like the kind of thing people envy on Instagram. A clean house, matching holiday pajamas, smiling photos at the apple orchard, and Sunday mornings where she brought me coffee in bed with almond milk, the way I liked it. I worked long hours managing construction crews, and she worked remotely as a UX designer, which meant she had the house to herself most of the day. I never questioned it. She'd always been the dependable one, organized, punctual, emotionally intelligent in a way I admired. For years, I believed that if anyone would ever stray, it would be me. Not because I wanted to, but because she just didn't seem like the type. And yet, something changed. Slowly. So gradually that I almost convinced myself I was imagining it. It started with her being overly cheerful. Not happy, but performatively upbeat, like she was overcompensating for something. She started going to Pilates 4 times a week, then 5, then hot yoga on weekends. She stopped inviting me to the occasional Saturday brunches she used to insist I join. When I'd ask who she was going with, the answers were vague. You don't know her, or just a friend from the gym. Her phone, which used to sit face up on the kitchen counter, now lived in her back pocket or face down on the nightstand. She turned off notifications, then changed her lock screen password. I caught her smiling at it once, a smile I used to think belonged to me. I didn't say anything. I didn't want to seem paranoid. One night she came home with a new purse, designer, leather, easily $1,000. I made a joke about it, something harmless, like, should I be worried you're upgrading your escape bag? She laughed too loud, then changed the subject to a podcast about emotional labor. She began talking about boundaries in a way that didn't include me. Not that I was violating them, just that I had to accept them, understand them, respect her need for space. She wanted to meditate alone in the evenings now, with noise-canceling headphones, incense, and a locked door. Locked. I used to knock and be invited in with a smile. Now, knocking felt intrusive. She stopped watching our shows. Said she wanted to read more. I'd come into the living room and find her curled up with a book she wouldn't let me touch, saying it was part of a growth process. Her social media went dark. Profile picture changed to something abstract, feed wiped, stories limited to close friends. I wasn't one of them. When I asked, she said she needed a more curated digital space. I nodded, smiled, and poured us both a drink, pretending I wasn't bleeding from a wound she never acknowledged. I started noticing details. A second phone charger in her car. Receipts from places she never mentioned visiting. Her scent lingering in the bathroom long after she claimed to have spent the night at her sister's. Once, I found a receipt in her coat pocket from a restaurant we used to go to together. On a Wednesday night, she told me she had therapy. I wanted to believe it was innocent. I needed to believe it. Because if I didn't, the alternative meant that everything I'd built, everything I trusted, was based on a lie. She started sleeping with her back to me. Said she couldn't sleep unless the window was open, even though she used to complain about the draft. Her kisses became shorter, then non-existent. Her I love yous came only after mine, like an echo that didn't want to exist. And still, I didn't confront her. I rationalized. Told myself maybe this was just a phase. Maybe she was depressed. Maybe work was stressing her out. But the truth was simpler and colder. She was changing, and I wasn't part of the upgrade. The light in her eyes when she looked at me had been replaced with a dull politeness, like a hostess waiting for a difficult guest to leave. I started noticing how often she smiled at her phone, how quickly she closed her laptop when I walked by. Once, I asked what she was watching. She said, just a documentary on self-actualization. Then she walked away before I could ask what that even meant. I stopped asking questions. I didn't want to know the answers. I still held on to the image of the woman I married. The one who used to dance barefoot in the kitchen while dinner was on the stove. The one who sent me stupid memes during meetings, who used to say we were a team. I kept hoping she'd come back. But each day, she slipped further away, like someone packing her bags in secret, not physically but emotionally, extracting herself piece by piece from the life we built together. And I, still holding out hope, pretended not to see the empty spaces. It was a Saturday afternoon when everything crystallized, not with a scream or a fight, but with the dull, surgical precision of a scalpel slicing through old scar tissue. She said she was going to a pottery class, something new she'd always wanted to try, part of her recent crusade for self-discovery. She even showed me the class confirmation on her phone, like a prop in a bad play, complete with the address and a cheery little Google Maps pin. I smiled and kissed her cheek, told her to have fun, then watched her drive away through the front window. I gave it 10 minutes before I got into my truck, not even trying to hide it. I didn't tail her. There was no need. I'd already set up the tracker under her rear bumper a week earlier, during one of her late-night meditations. It didn't take long. Her car didn't go anywhere near the ceramic studio. It went to a downtown apartment complex I recognized too well, upscale, modern, units with exposed brick and balconies covered in hanging plants. I parked across the street, pulled up the app, and watched her stop moving in front of Building 3. I waited. 45 minutes later, I walked in through the front entrance after a resident buzzed me in without a second glance. I found the unit easily. 3rd floor. Apartment 312. Doors slightly ajar, like carelessness was part of the decor. I didn't knock. I didn't enter. I just stood in the hallway, out of sight, heart calm like still water. I heard her laugh through the door, a sound I hadn't heard in months. It was light, unfiltered, the way she used to sound with me before everything turned clinical and correct. Then his voice, low, smug, that kind of artificially confident tone men use when they think they're getting away with something. They were joking about something. I didn't catch the words, just the rhythm. And then she said it. He still doesn't have a clue. Poor guy would probably thank me if I told him I was leaving for someone smarter. Her voice was so clear, so flippant, so deliberately cruel that I wondered if she knew I was listening and said it just to twist the knife. I felt something inside me shut off. Not snap, not burn, just shut down, like flipping a breaker. The disbelief didn't come. The tears didn't come. Just silence. Cold, clinical silence. I turned and walked back to my truck without making a sound. Drove home like I was running an errand. The house was still warm with the scent of the candles she lit that morning, like the lie was trying to be cozy. I sat on the edge of the bed we used to share and stared at the dresser she insisted we repaint last year. Something more modern, she said. The drawers were still full of our folded life, her socks and t-shirts and perfumes lined up like soldiers. I opened her jewelry box, the one she forgot I gave her on our 5th anniversary. It still held a note I wrote her back then. To the only person who ever made this life feel like home. I didn't tear it, didn't burn it, just folded it back and closed the lid. There was no rage, no fantasy of confrontation. She had already destroyed the marriage. What she didn't know was that she'd just destroyed her safety net. Because now I knew exactly who the other man was. And more importantly, I knew exactly how she saw him too. Not as a partner, not as a savior, but as a temporary distraction, a stepping stone to something bigger in her mind. The way she talked about him in that apartment, like a pawn she hadn't even bothered to name, told me everything I needed. She was lying to both of us, manipulating both of us. And while he thought he was the winner, he didn't realize he was just the next one to be gutted. I didn't say a word to her that night. She came home smiling, fake clay smudges on her hands, talking about how therapeutic it was to shape something with your own hands. I nodded, kissed her forehead, and told her I was glad she found something that made her happy. She smiled like the world was hers. And I knew, right then, that it wouldn't be for much longer. She thought she was playing two men. What she didn't realize was that one of them had just stopped being her husband and started becoming her reckoning. I became invisible on purpose. That's the first rule when you're hunting someone who thinks they're smarter than you. Don't let them know they've already lost. While she went about her days filled with yoga mats, tiny bowls of overpriced salads, and phony self-help Instagram mantras, I turned every inch of my calm into reconnaissance. I didn't need to raise my voice. I had already started peeling back every layer of her life with the silence of a scalpel. The first move was data. I logged into our shared bank account and downloaded 3 months of transaction history, sorting every payment into categories: fuel, food, subscriptions, travel. A $142 charge from a boutique hotel downtown stood out. She told me she was visiting her sister that weekend. Her sister posted photos from their beach house, hundreds of miles away. She either lied to me, to her sister, or to both. I screen captured the transaction, created a folder on my hard drive titled Emma Fiction, and moved on. I didn't confront her. Not yet. Instead, I asked her casually, one evening over wine, how her sister's dog was doing. She paused half a second too long before answering. Still limping, she said. Her sister doesn't have a dog. I smiled, poured her another glass, and told her I hoped he got better soon. Move 2, logistics. She'd started working late more often, so I arranged a flower delivery to her office. Nothing suspicious, just roses and a note that read, "Thinking of you, love." I waited for the thank you text that never came, so I called the delivery service 3 days later. They told me no one by her name was present at the office that day. Maybe she was working remote, the rep offered. Maybe. Or maybe she was with him. I didn't press it. Instead, I marked the date in my journal and noted the silence. Move 3, her phone habits. She had grown protective of it, guarded, like a snake coiled around a secret. So I didn't touch her phone. I didn't need to. I bought a second SIM card, slipped it into an old phone, and created a fake Instagram profile. Nothing seductive, just a decent-looking man with vague interests in art and wine and spiritual journeys. I followed her account, 2 hours later, she followed back. By the end of the week, she had liked 5 of my posts and replied to one story about feeling disconnected lately. I didn't push it. Just watched. Collected. Then I took a bigger risk. I knew her best friend Julia was always at the heart of her lies, her alibi, the name she dropped like a shield whenever I asked where she was going. So I started watching Julia instead. Not following. Watching. She worked at a real estate agency near downtown, so I waited until I saw her post about an open house, then showed up. Pretended I was browsing. Asked about the neighborhood, talked about schools, made small talk until she mentioned her wild weekend in Palm Springs. I nodded and thanked her. That was the same weekend Emma told me she was staying with Julia in town to help her move. Another entry in the folder. Another fracture in the illusion. From there, I escalated. Not in confrontation, but in control. I planted conversations like traps. I'd mention a fake friend's name. Remember Michael? He said he ran into you last Friday downtown, and she'd blink too quickly, hesitate just a beat before spinning her story. I never challenged it. I just observed. I started saving every location ping I got from the shared calendar she forgot to delete me from, every receipt that ended up in the laundry, every note she scribbled and tossed in the kitchen trash. And it all painted a picture, not of a woman in love with someone else, but of a woman in love with secrecy, with manipulation, with the thrill of being desired by 2 men who had no idea they were being choreographed like characters in her little drama. Except one of us wasn't in the dark anymore. I wasn't her husband at that point. I was her mirror. And she didn't even realize she was performing for someone who had already left the audience. My nights were spent building a timeline. Photos. Screen captures. Transaction records. GPS logs. Fake texts. I knew where she was, who she was with, what she wore, what drink she ordered. I knew that the man she was seeing, a mid-level marketing exec named Daniel, was 10 years younger, recently divorced, and thought she was single. I found his social media. Found his ex-wife. Even found his gym. I didn't confront him. Didn't send messages. I just waited. I wanted to see how far she'd go, how deep her lies would dig before she hit bedrock. She kept lying. Kept twisting reality with that same sugar-coated voice she used when she asked if I'd take out the trash. And every time she did, I nodded, smiled, and noted the exact time and date she confirmed her own destruction. She didn't know it yet, but she was walking barefoot into a minefield she helped me build, step by step, secret by secret. I chose the art gallery for a reason, not because I cared about abstract paintings or ambient jazz echoing off white walls, but because she did. It was her favorite place to feel cultured, sophisticated, desired. And it happened to be the perfect place for an unveiling. I told her I wanted to reconnect, that I had reservations at the gallery's rooftop lounge, and she showed up 15 minutes late in a dress I hadn't seen before, lipstick too bold for someone who claimed she wanted to talk things out. She kissed my cheek like she hadn't just been building her double life on the ruins of mine. We walked in together, my arm loosely around her waist, past wine glasses clinking and pretentious murmurs about negative space. She smiled, radiant, as if the past few months hadn't been drenched in lies. I waited until we reached the final hall. The gallery had agreed to display a piece of personal contemporary media as part of a private showcase, something experimental. What she didn't expect was for the final exhibit to be a looping video on a mounted screen, silent but crystal clear. Her, Daniel, in his car, kissing, laughing, her climbing onto his lap, framed by the dashboard camera I had slipped into his vehicle days prior. She froze. Not right away. At first, she tilted her head like she didn't understand what she was seeing, then recognition sunk in like a cold dagger. Her breath caught, and I watched her eyes flick from the screen to the people nearby, to me, calculating how much damage had just been done. "It's not what it looks like," she said, voice low, hand shaking ever so slightly. "You don't understand. We were just talking. It got out of hand." I didn't blink. Didn't nod. I let the silence chew through her nerves. "It was a mistake," she continued, trying to sound measured, reasonable, human. "You've been so distant lately, I didn't know where we stood." I slowly turned to her, eyes steady, voice quiet. "You told him you were single. You wore my ring around your neck and laughed about it. You said I'd thank you if you left me." She flinched, just slightly, then straightened, found her footing in familiar terrain. "Maybe if you'd been more present, more involved, I wouldn't have needed someone else." The line was rehearsed, predictable, and as hollow as she'd become. "I spent the last year watching you drift, Emma. And I didn't pull you back because I thought you were finding yourself, But you weren't finding anything, you were erasing me. Her lip curled slightly, like a cornered actress trying to regain control of the stage. So what? You're the victim now? You stalked me, filmed me, violated my privacy, just to make me look like the bad guy. I tilted my head. You don't need any help looking like the bad guy. You did that all on your own. I just held up the mirror. Her confidence wavered, and something darker flickered behind her eyes. You think he cares about you? I asked, stepping closer. I've been feeding him your texts. The ones where you call him boring. Where you plan to move on after you're done playing house. Her face turned ash. You didn't, she started. He knows, I said, voice soft but sharp. He blocked you an hour ago. Maybe check your phone. Her hands twitched toward her purse, but she didn't reach in. She knew. I could see it in her posture, the realization that the man she betrayed me for had just walked away too. Alone in a room full of strangers, her sins looped on a screen while her fake dignity bled out beneath dim lights and expensive art. And still, she reached for the last card. You won't leave me, she said, voice trembling, a cruel smile trying to stay on her face. You're too scared. You don't know how to live without me. I leaned in close, my breath inches from her ear. I already started. 3 months ago. Her knees buckled slightly, her eyes blinking too fast, throat tightening as the room tilted around her. And still, I didn't move. I didn't storm out or make a scene. I stood there beside her, letting the moment drag like a razor over skin. The people in the room began to take notice. The screen, the tension, the woman now breathing in short, panicked gasps. Her face, once composed and smug, now cracked under the weight of exposure. And I stood beside her like a statue, unmoving, letting her drown in her own unraveling. The air between us was thick, charged, sharp enough to cut through steel. I wasn't done yet. Not tonight. Not in this room. The revelation was only the opening act. The reckoning was still coming. She came at me the second the gallery doors shut behind us, her heels clicking like gunshots across the concrete as she spun around and hissed my name like a curse, her eyes wide and desperate and feral beneath all that designer polish. You ambushed me, she snapped, her voice trembling with rage and embarrassment. You humiliated me in front of strangers like some pathetic control freak. What the hell is wrong with you? I didn't flinch. I didn't even blink. I watched her unravel, piece by piece, as if her designer dress were stitched with threadbare lies that could no longer hold her together. This is abuse, she spat, real venom now, not performance, rage flooding in where the charm used to live. You think you're the victim here? You smothered me, made everything about your schedule, your needs, your boring little routines. I was dying in this marriage. I let the words fall between us like trash tossed from a car window. I didn't move. I didn't even look offended. Then you should have left, I said, voice low, eyes flat. But instead, you chose to rot from the inside and take everything down with you. That one hit. I saw her swallow it like poison, her mouth tightening before the next venomous wave. You want to act like you're so calm, so put together? You're pathetic. You didn't even see it happening. I walked all over you for months, and you didn't even notice. You were too wrapped up in playing the perfect husband to realize you were just nothing to me. Still, I didn't react. I didn't flinch. I let her dig her own grave, each sentence a new shovelful of dirt tossed over the image she thought she could still control. You're weak, she hissed, stepping closer now, like proximity would give her power. You never made me feel wanted. Daniel did. He made me feel alive. Like a real woman. Not some suburban trophy. I tilted my head, just slightly. Then why did he block you the second he found out who you really are? Her face cracked. Just a flicker, but I caught it. Don't act like you're better than me, she snapped. Desperate to regain footing, you invaded my privacy, stalked me, spied on me. What kind of man does that? The kind you don't get to lie to anymore. She tried a new tactic then. Her voice dipped, softened, her expression pulling into something close to tears. We could fix this, she whispered. You and me, we have history. You don't just throw that away because of a mistake. You threw it away in a hotel parking lot. The tears didn't come. Not real ones. Just the idea of them, strategically placed, as if I hadn't seen the same act used to get out of traffic tickets and uncomfortable family dinners. You can't just shut off your feelings, she said, her voice trembling now, real panic laced beneath the performance. You can't just stop loving someone. I didn't, I replied. You did. I'm just adjusting to the reality you created. She stepped back then, something breaking behind her eyes. The confidence was fading fast now, replaced by confusion, fear, and a rapidly diminishing arsenal of manipulations. So what, this is it? She said, voice rising, cracking. You're just going to walk away like none of this mattered? I looked at her, really looked at her, not the woman I married, not the woman I hoped would come back, but the one standing in front of me now, desperate, cruel, exposed. It did matter. Until you made sure it didn't. Her mouth opened like she had more to say, but no sound came. There was nothing left to weaponize. No leverage. No secrets. I had taken them all. She looked around the parking lot, as if hoping for a witness, someone to validate her unraveling, someone to tell her this wasn't really happening. But it was. And she was alone in it. I gave you everything, she said, quieter now, almost to herself. And I gave you loyalty, I said, my voice the calmest it had been all night. You gambled it for a thrill. And lost everything worth keeping. Her hands trembled then. Not from anger. From the terrifying realization that there was nothing left for her to manipulate. Nothing to guilt trip, to shame, to bend. I wasn't fighting her anymore. I wasn't even trying. I had already let go. And that silence, my indifference, was louder than any scream she could have thrown at me. She stood there, shaking, mascara cracked at the edges of her perfect eyes, watching the man she thought she had broken walk past her with the steady steps of someone who had already won. I didn't say goodbye. She didn't deserve that word. Not anymore. Revenge began not with a scream, not with a door slam, but with a spreadsheet. I listed every asset, account, subscription, and shared responsibility like a general preparing for siege. No detail too small. I made copies of everything, our joint finances, her credit card statements, the texts, the screenshots, the video from the gallery, even the email trail of her Airbnb reservation the weekend she told me she was at a wellness retreat. I backed it all up to 3 encrypted drives, one of which I mailed to a trusted friend out of state, sealed in a brown envelope with a sticky note. Release only if something happens to me. That part wasn't paranoia, it was leverage. She liked secrets, but I had turned them into landmines. The bank accounts were next. I moved my direct deposit into a new, private account and began transferring funds, methodically, incrementally, just enough to go unnoticed at first. Then I filed a legal motion to separate our finances under preliminary divorce grounds citing infidelity and financial endangerment. She hadn't even noticed the withdrawal form she co-signed months ago, buried in a pile of refinance paperwork I'd slipped into a stack with dinner waiting. The house was mine, had been before we married, and I confirmed with the attorney that she had no legal claim to it under our prenup, which I also quietly updated 6 months prior when she first started talking about independence and boundaries. That document, notarized and ironclad, was the linchpin in everything. She didn't read it back then. She signed it during one of her enlightenment phases, said she wanted to redefine the rules of our relationship. I agreed, and made sure the rules she redefined would be the very ones that exiled her. I canceled her authorized card on my account, reclaimed the car she drove, it was leased under my name, and the dealership had no problem retrieving it once I sent a formal revocation of use. I left her the keys to a rental I'd paid for in advance, 3 months, just enough for the divorce process to get underway. I wanted her stunned, not homeless. I wasn't cruel, just precise. I changed the passwords on every shared streaming service, not out of spite, but to remind her with every login attempt that she no longer lived in this life. Utilities? Transferred. Insurance? Renegotiated. Emergency contacts at her doctor, dentist, vet? All updated. The house, now legally fortified, became a fortress. She'd come back to find the locks changed, legally, appropriately, with a police officer on standby just in case. I didn't want drama. I wanted execution. Then came the social detonation. Her parents adored me, thought of me as the stable anchor in her life. So I visited them, calmly, one afternoon. Brought them a folder, thick and clean. No photos, no accusations. Just dates, messages, bank statements, and one very carefully worded letter explaining my intent to divorce their daughter, not out of malice, but necessity. They didn't scream. Her father just sat quietly while her mother wiped her face with a trembling hand and whispered, "She told us you were the problem." I left them with the truth and no demands. Just knowledge. Then I turned to her professional world. I knew she'd bragged to Daniel about how she was angling for a promotion. I also knew she'd been using work time for personal rendezvous and billing it as client research. Her company had a strict code of conduct policy, especially concerning undeclared relationships that posed potential conflicts of interest. So I sent an anonymous dossier to her HR department, timestamp screenshots, GPS logs of company card usage during trysts, and an audio file where she openly mocked her manager during a pillow talk session with Daniel. No threats, no signature, just irrefutable data. Within a week, they called her in for a formal discussion. I already knew what would happen next. She was too volatile to keep, too exposed to protect. I set the final trap by giving her what she thought was a chance to fix things. I invited her for coffee. Neutral ground. She came with a carefully rehearsed apology, crocodile tears loading in the corners of her eyes, her voice soft, remorseful, manipulative. I let her talk. Let her lie again. Watched the wheels turn as she tried to read me. Then I handed her a simple envelope. Inside, divorce papers, a copy of the prenup she had foolishly signed, and a detailed asset division plan that gave her exactly what she deserved. Nothing she hadn't earned, and none of what she thought she still had. Her face went pale as she read the list, eyes darting, voice cracking. She asked if we could slow down, said we didn't have to end it this way. I stood, took one last look at the woman who destroyed herself with greed and lies, and said, "Emma, you already ended it. I'm just making it official." Then I walked away, calm, measured, victorious, not because I shouted louder, but because I planned better. It happened at her niece's birthday party, of all places. One of those backyard suburban celebrations with paper streamers, folding chairs, and too many cupcakes. She didn't expect me to show up, but I had been invited by her brother, who told me, pointedly, that everyone deserves to know who they really married. I arrived 15 minutes late, let her see me from across the yard as I stood beside her father, who already knew everything. Her mother sat stiffly under the tent, not meeting her eyes, holding her youngest grandchild like he was the only thing keeping her grounded. Emma walked toward me with a forced smile, all pretense and tension, arms slightly out like she wasn't sure whether to hug me or slap me. I didn't move. I didn't smile. I let her close the distance, let her panic simmer just beneath the surface of her mascaraed eyes. She whispered, "What are you doing here?" And I just said, "It's family, right?" and gestured to her dad, who gave her a look so sharp it cut her mid-step. Her sister walked over then, used to be her closest ally, handed me a folder, glanced at Emma with pure disgust, and said, "We thought he should be the one to share it." Inside were 10 neatly printed pages, screenshots, message logs, date-stamped locations, all curated with the precision of someone who wanted the truth to be undeniable. Emma's face drained of color before she even reached the 3rd page. "Who gave you this?" she snapped, eyes darting around like a trapped animal. "Does it matter?" her father asked from behind her. She spun, startled, only to meet his stare, cold, disappointed, absolute. "You lied to all of us," he said. "You mocked this family behind our backs." She tried to stammer something, but her best friend, Julia, stepped in next, arms crossed, saying, "I told him. I saw the messages you sent Daniel about me. About everyone. I was your shield while you laughed about how easy we all were." Emma tried to laugh. A hollow, strained sound. "This is ridiculous. It's not even real. He's manipulating all of you. The only one manipulating anyone was you," Julia said, voice hard. Her lover, Daniel, chose that exact moment to appear on the far side of the yard, walking briskly toward her with a look that said he'd just learned something ugly. "You told me he abused you," he said flatly, stopping in front of her. "That you feared him. That he cheated first." His voice didn't shake, didn't rise. It just broke her. "You said you loved me," she whimpered. "I did," he replied. "Until I found the messages you sent your friend, laughing about how you were going to keep me around long enough to upgrade again." He didn't yell. He didn't curse. He just looked at her like she was already a memory. And then he turned and walked away. She reached after him, stumbled, grabbing his arm. But he shook her off with the indifference of a man who'd already grieved. Eyes were on her now, her family, her friends, neighbors she'd smiled at 100 times, all watching her collapse in real time. She turned back to me, the only one who hadn't moved. "You planned this," she said through gritted teeth, mascara now smudging, voice cracking like glass. "You wanted to ruin me." "No," I said calmly, hands in my pockets. "You did that all by yourself. I just stopped cleaning up after you." She stood there, trembling, face blotched red, trying to summon something. Anger, charm, denial, but nothing came. Not one person came to her side. The woman who once commanded every room, she entered now stood alone in the middle of a backyard party, surrounded by a silence louder than any accusation. A child ran past her, laughing, breaking the tension for a second, but only for a second. She collapsed onto one of the plastic chairs, breath heaving, looking everywhere for someone who would take her side. No one moved. Her mother stared blankly at the grass. Her father turned away. Julia whispered something to her husband and walked back into the house. She looked at me, the last pillar in her crumbling world, and saw nothing. No rage, no sorrow, just the truth, that I had already left her, that everyone else had too. And still, I didn't walk away. I stood there, silent and still, letting her sit in the wreckage she built, knowing she could feel my eyes on her, worse than any speech, more punishing than any insult. She looked down, finally, like a child caught lying. And that was the moment it broke. Not the shouting, not the shame, but the silence. The realization that she was no longer in control, that no one believed her, that the game was over, and she had lost. It happened in the middle of her cousin's engagement party, an upscale rooftop event with champagne towers, string lights, and a jazz trio humming in the background. I hadn't planned to attend, but her father personally invited me, said it was time everyone saw things as they really are. When I walked in, heads turned, and I saw her freeze mid-laugh, wine glass halfway to her lips, eyes locking onto mine with a flicker of panic. Her mother was beside her, tense and silent. Her father stood near the bar, arms folded, watching like a man waiting for the final scene. Her cousin approached me, gave me a quiet nod, and stepped aside. Emma walked toward me then, tight smile stretching across her face like it might hold her mask together. "You shouldn't be here," she hissed under her breath, trying to keep the charade alive. "Why?" "Afraid someone might ask questions you can't lie your way out of," I said, loud enough for the couple nearest us to freeze mid-conversation. She glanced around, then grabbed my wrist. "We're not doing this here. You don't get to choose where anymore," I snapped, yanking my arm back, voice rising. "You lost that right the second you decided your ego was more important than your vows." People were turning now, the hum of conversation fading. Her best friend Julia stepped closer, arms crossed. "Emma, just stop," she said. "It's already out." "You shut your mouth," Emma barked, pointing at her like a cornered animal. "You think you're better than me? You're just a miserable, jealous." "Careful," I warned, stepping forward. "Every word you say now is another nail in the coffin you built yourself." "You think you're some kind of hero?" she snapped, eyes wild now. "You're a pathetic, spineless coward who had to spy and stalk to feel like a man." "No," I said, my voice calm but sharp as broken glass. "I'm the man who stood by you through every lie, every breakdown, every I need space speech while you spread your legs for someone too dumb to see you were using him too." Gasps echoed. Someone dropped a glass. Daniel, standing behind a group near the buffet, turned pale and tried to slip out the side, but Emma saw him. "Don't you walk away," she shouted. "You said you loved me." He didn't even turn around, just kept walking. "That's what you do, right?" I said, loud now, my voice cutting through the air like thunder. "You make promises with your mouth and break them with your body." "You were never enough," she screamed, tears finally spilling. "You never listened. You never touched me like he did. You were dead inside and you dragged me down with you. I was building a life while you were playing pretend." I snapped. "I gave you loyalty, stability, trust. You gave me manipulation, deception, and a performance worthy of a daytime soap." Her father stepped forward. "Emma, enough," he said, but she ignored him, turned on me like a cyclone. "You think they all love you? They don't. They feel sorry for you. Poor, clueless husband. You're not strong, you're pathetic." "No," I said, voice steady, eyes locked onto hers. "What's pathetic is cheating on someone who never wronged you. What's pathetic is needing lies to feel interesting. What's pathetic is standing here, screaming in front of your family because your entire world came crashing down, and you still think you're the victim." Silence. Pure, heavy silence. Her mother cried softly behind her. Julia shook her head and walked away. A man nearby whispered, "Jesus," and someone else pulled out their phone. Emma collapsed into a chair, makeup running, dress clinging to her as she sobbed and muttered excuses no one was listening to anymore. I stood over her, not in triumph, but in finality. "You wanted to be seen," I said quietly. "Now everyone sees you." Then I turned and walked through the crowd, past stunned faces and dropped jaws, through the heavy air of judgment she created, not once looking back. Because there was nothing left to see. She fell faster than I expected, like a star burning too bright right before it implodes. Within 2 weeks of the party, she lost her job, not because of a formal scandal, but because the rumors spread faster than wildfire and HR doesn't like employees who come with personal PR problems. Her manager politely suggested she seek new opportunities, and she took the hint. Her friends vanished, some silently, some with brutal clarity. Julia posted a photo the day after the party with a caption that read, "Some people don't deserve second chances, just distance." Her phone went quiet. Social media dried up. Every platform she used to flaunt her perfect little life became a graveyard of deleted photos and unanswered comments. Even her siblings stopped responding. Her father cut her off financially. Her mother couldn't look at her without crying. She moved into a tiny rental 2 towns over, a place where no one asked questions, where she could cling to the illusion of rebuilding in peace, but everyone still whispered. Her LinkedIn profile disappeared, and last I heard, she was bartending at a place near the highway, the kind of place where she used to turn her nose up. Daniel ghosted her completely. The second the spotlight turned hot, he evaporated, deleted her number, changed his gym, told mutual contacts he dodged a bullet. She tried texting me at first, then emailing. The messages started out defiant, "You'll regret this," followed by "You're not the man I thought you were." A week later, the tone shifted. "I miss you. I made a mistake. We can fix this." One night, she called, blocked number, of course. I let it ring. She left a voicemail, sobbing. Said she couldn't sleep. That she'd lost everything. That she still loved me. That no one looked at her the way I used to. That she wanted to come home. Her voice cracked when she said it, like the words themselves were too heavy for her to carry anymore. The next day, she showed up at my door. No makeup. Hair tied back. Dressed like she was trying to remember who she used to be. She looked smaller. Like someone had wrung the arrogance out of her and left behind nothing but regret and fragments. "Please," she whispered, eyes swollen, lips trembling. "Just let me explain. I don't even need you to forgive me. Just talk to me like I'm still human." I looked at her for a long time. Not with hatred. Not even with anger. Just that cold, painful detachment you feel when you realize the person in front of you is already a ghost. "You're not the woman I married," I said calmly. "And I'm not the man who would have saved you." She broke, right there on my doorstep, sobbing into her hands like a child. I let her cry, let her feel every second of it. And when she looked up at me, desperate for anything, comfort, pity, even just acknowledgement, I said the last thing I ever would to her. "You threw away everything for nothing. And now you are nothing to me." I closed the door without another word. That was the last time I saw her. I don't hate her. I don't wish her pain. She already created a life full of it. I simply moved on. Better, stronger, clearer. Because some endings aren't about revenge. They're about reminding the world that loyalty is priceless and betrayal has consequences. Thank you for listening to my story. I'd love to know where you're from, and if this story hit the way you hoped it would. Let me know.